All right. Thanks, everybody, for coming. Enjoy your lunches. We're going to get started on the last part of it. I want to make sure that those breakout sessions, how many people learned a lot from those breakout sessions? A lot of information distilled, right? So I just want to make sure, I'm just going to talk about companies. All the people, thanks for those who presented, but we've had Clearwater Analytics, Natural Intelligence, we've had Aptitex, Slalom, so thanks, Slalom's a new member of the ITC, PlexTrack, several from PlexTrack, Intuit, Microsoft, St. Luke's Health Systems, we've had, and now the city of Boise. This is going to be awesome. So we've had the opportunity to have, two different keynotes, and our third keynote now is going to be Alex Winkler. Alex is the Chief Information Officer for the city of Boise.
True.
And has a great history where she was actually a pilot in the Air Force. And she's probably going to tell you a little bit about some things that are going on, but we are so fortunate to have Alex with the city of Boise and in our community. She worked at HealthWise and some other areas. And we're so fortunate to have her. She's going to have a great presentation that is going to be electric. And if anybody here gets electrocuted, we need you to sign some. You won't get hurt here at all because of Alex's presentation. Okay, no, that's not going to happen, right, Alex? But I do want Alex will be here, and I think Jet Hansen will be up here also with helping facilitate some things. So let's hear it for Alex Winkler. Thanks, Alex.
Test. All right, I want to see if this thing's on. It is. Let's see if the clicker works. Can we cue the slides? Looking for the slides. There we go. The clicker's not working. Let's see. Is this thing on? I am the CIO. Isn't it embarrassing when the CIO can't operate the clicker?
The right side should advance in one.
Oh, there we go. All right, thanks.
Alex, can those folks hear you?
I don't think those folks can hear you.
Oh, well, okay. Did
how are you
Jay
doing?
introduce you?
Yes, I'm introduced.
Like
Yes.
all of the introduction, or does the audience understand? I'm going to sit in a chair.
We
like this.
we haven't figured out the
Okay.
routine yet.
Okay. Because I just want to share. So obviously we're good friends, and I was so honored when Alex asked me to join her.
I actually said, "Could you be my wingman?"
which has relevance for the story if you don't know Alex. And I promise I'll be short. But I mean, Alex has this amazing journey that she's been on, right? So she started in college. She got a CS degree. She went into the U.S. Air Force. And of course, now she's CIO for the city of Boise, which we love. And, and I realized Alex is going to be up on stage telling stories, which is awesome. But, we're Dan DeCloss and Jay were sitting in chairs. I'm like, Alex is a kinetic storyteller. She needs to be moving around on stage. So I'm just going to sit on my chair here and every once in a while ask her a question and try not to get in the way. But it'll be so much fun. She does such a great job with this. So, Alex.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So how did I get here? Well, in multiple layers of that. I met Jay 3 days before I was to take on CIO at the city of Boise, which was the start of the fiscal year, literally started 3 days before the start of the fiscal year on September 27th. And just started getting into my origin story. He's like, oh, I have this conference I want you to be a speaker at. So he telegraphed this like September 24th or something like that, and said that he wanted me here. And one of the reasons I think he wanted me here was just because the novelty of my story. It started, like Jet just alluded, at UC Davis when I was a comp sci major, like probably many of you guys. And I also happen to have I was an Air Force ROTC student also, right? Didn't have the money for college at the time. So I was like, well, I could get it from ROTC. And so I was able to earn a scholarship. But at the time, I didn't really know what to major in, as many students. And so there was just a limited number of choices when you're like selecting. And really all they wanted to offer full rides to were comp sci and engineering, whatever engineering. It's like, well, I think comp sci sounds a little bit easier. But at the time I knew like all of WordPerfect 4.2. I'm not kidding you. I wasn't the kid coding in like with their dad. That wasn't me. I was like out on the basketball court or doing something else, riding my bike around the neighborhood. So I really knew very little. So I go to Davis and I'm doing comp sci, and like it was a pretty exceptional learning curve, you just might say. But about halfway through college, at some point at some ROTC event, they're like, well, Alex, why don't you want to be a pilot? And I was like, well, I'm going to be a comm officer. I have my comp sci degree. I'm going to run computer projects. They're like, yeah, but you could be a pilot. I was like, really? Like, I don't know anything about that. And they said, well, that's what they teach you in pilot training. I was like, okay, well, what's the worst that happens? Right? Kind of like, what's the worst that can happen? And they're like, well, you flunk out and then you go off and be a comm officer. Like, oh, nice. Absolutely. I'll still have a job. Okay, sweet. And so I ended up pivoting at that point, halfway through college, and deciding to be a pilot. Finished out my comm sci degree and then go to pilot training. So I kind of liken that to my first leap of faith. Like, what's the worst that can happen? And it was at that moment where I was like, I think I'm just going to try it and see if it works. So that's what our theme of the talk is going to be today, about leaps of faith.
Change.
Yeah, exactly. Adapting to change. So we talked about adapting to change and how we live in this just ever-changing world right now. And so I thought that might be a fun theme to talk about, is what are the kinds of mental models, what are the kinds of things to be thinking about as you're either A, responding to change in your environment, or B, electing to change or make a change, both of which we know is happening at a rapid pace today. So without further ado, this is me, way back when, class of 98-15, Vance Air Force Base. Oh my God, I had no idea when I made that leap of faith what the hell I was getting into, excuse me. Holy Moses, I show up there, and what I didn't know is, though they assured me I'd learn everything there, more than half the people there had been flying since they were like 2 or out of diapers. Every little boy in that picture wanted to be a pilot since he was in diapers. I kid you not. Me, I had a wild hair and decided to go. So it's like, wow, that leap of faith is really hurting right now. And so I'm sitting there in pilot training. Now that's when the negative self-talk starts. Like, Alex, are you really going to do this? What does this look like? You know what happens when you're flying airplanes with negative self-talk? The stomach starts going. Oh yeah, air sickness, not fun. So not only do you have the negative self-talk, you got the stomach acid going at the same time. I'm puking into I don't know how many bags. I call up my dad, and I'm not kidding you. I call up my dad crying. And
you really look up to your dad.
Oh yeah, my dad, yeah, he and I had a really good relationship. He was chief warrant officer in the Navy. I don't know if you know anything about chief warrant officers in the Navy, but they are hardcore, right? There was, yeah, no softies are chief warrant officers in the Navy. So I call him up, and I'm kind of going through some of this negative self-talk, right? And somewhere out there, I'm just like implied that I suck, right? Like, I can't do this. I don't know enough. And he wrote me this letter, and it starts with, "It seems like I've given you the wrong impression. You don't suck," right? And the letter goes on for another 6 pages. But what he went on to tell me was like, it's all about your attitude. Like, pick yourself up, Winkler. Okay, at the time I was Smith. Sorry, Winkler is my last name now. Married name. Pick yourself up. Like, for the love of Pete, you're the one doing it to yourself. You know how to learn. Like, if you learned anything in comp sci at UC Davis, it's you know how to learn, right? You figured this stuff out. Learn the language of flying. And he was able to, with a single letter, kind of help me change my attitude. And that was my leap of faith in that moment. It's believing in myself that I could do something. At the time, I was very much doubting. And that helped propel me to near the top of my class, being able to choose C-130s, which is the airframe that I wanted to fly, and just have a really great start in a new career that I really had no idea about. So that was a fun moment. And that's that leap right there, is just figuring out, like, you know what, it's my choice in how I'm approaching these problems, and I know how to learn. If these guys know how to fly, I know how to learn to fly. And just realizing that I was there. Another thing he said was like, listen, if the point of pilot training was to teach students that already knew how to fly, like why bother? Why have pilot training? Like the whole point is to learn. I was like, oh, good point, Dad. So fast forward 4 years later.
I know this story.
I know, it's a painful one. It's a deep, deep, dark place for me, this story. So all's well, learn how to fly, flying C-130s all over the world, go on my deployments. September 11th happens. First day of aircraft commander school, in fact, was September 11th for me. And I remember looking around the room, just like at my fellow aircraft commander students, like our lives just really changed. Like we're watching the television in pilot school and we're like, our lives just changed. And they did. We spent lots of time in the sandbox, come back periodically to do training and go back to the sandbox. And one of the trainings that we're doing out of Little Rock, Arkansas, was going down to Alexandria for Joint Readiness Training Command training, right? So it's supposed to be this stressful, tactical training. You're pretending you're at war so that you're learning how to be at war.
Would you call it war games?
Yeah, like
Kind of like that?
in a civilian way.
Yeah, stressful.
Yeah, very stressful.
Complex.
Right? So we're flying this low-level route, 250 feet above the ground. Random shallow approach, coming into the airfield, Alexandria, this is the airfield. And my crew is just a visual approach. My crew's like, but it's fast, right? It's super fast. Pulling the throttles back, putting the gear down, configuring the airplane to land. We get clear to land, but this is all happening like really rapidly. And I land, and on the rollout, tower goes, "Did you just land on runway 18?" And my stomach sinks. Closed runway 18? You were clear to land on runway 14. And I said, "Yes, sir. I just landed on 18." I look up and I see helos parked along the side of this closed runway I just landed on. And I don't know if you know the meaning of that. I landed on a closed runway. I could have killed everybody.
What could go wrong
Yeah.
if you landed on a closed runway?
I could have killed everybody. I could have touched wingtips with the helo. Who knows why it's closed? Was there a divot in the middle of it? In this case, it's because they had parking there for the training, but thank God the helos were on the outside. And I just remember honestly, I'm shaking just remembering that moment. It was in 2002, but this is 20 years later and I'm still remembering it because all I could think of is like, I'm sitting in that pilot seat. I'm a new left seater. And I was like, this is my crew. This is my responsibility. The buck stops here. The buck stops here in my seat, and I just did this. So I'm even getting dry mouth thinking about it. It's so funny. And so I walk into the tower, and I was like, I have a lot of choices in this moment. They teach you that as an aircraft commander, you're responsible. You're accountable. You are it. It doesn't matter how young you are. I was pretty damn young. It's you. And so you hear that. So intellectually, you know that. But when you feel it, that's a whole different thing altogether. So I phoned home and I said, this is what just happened. I'm responsible. And I stopped talking. And they're like, Roger that. We're going to fly an airplane home or fly an airplane to you, pick you up, and you're going to be flown home and we'll figure out what to do. At that point, I thought my flying career was over. I'm not kidding you. That's a really bad gaffe to make. That's no small potatoes. The whole crew got me there. Like we were just visually locked in on that aim point. All of us. There were 4 people in that cockpit. All of us were locked in on that aim point, airspeed, checking our gear. But what we didn't do was look up. What we didn't do was put the ILS into instruments and back ourselves up with data. What we didn't do was question where we were headed. It was all about aim point and airspeed. But we didn't take that moment to step back and look at the environment and double check against our instruments, against each other, that we were in fact landing on the right one. And there's not a lot of difference. It's 40 degrees, like, but we had been approaching it from a different part of the, it happened. So in that moment, I thought my career was over, but what I really learned in my leap of learning in this moment was what it felt like to be accountable, right? And responsible and just own it. So, you see here, this was what was in my permanent military record when I had to get requal. It says, due to poor judgment and lack of situational awareness, the aircraft landed unauthorized on runway 18. That's not a fun thing to have in your permanent record. And I didn't know if I could come back, right? And that was the thing that happened over time, was reestablishing my own belief in myself, and then also my reputational capital, period, right, when you make that kind of mistake. But it did happen. This is me over Liberia a few years later, actually just a year later, in fact, having fun flying around Europe. We were stationed in Germany at that time. And I did come back. You can come back. Sometimes it's a one mistake Air Force, sometimes it's not. In this case, I was able to come back and really learn, like I said, extreme ownership, and that you can come back. So that was kind of my two lessons.
You took that leap
there.
of faith. You're like, I have to assume responsibility for this. I
Mm-hmm.
don't know what the heck's going to happen, and then more happen. More
Exactly.
good things happen.
More good things happen. So this is where the choose your own adventure story keeps going, right? So we're now in Germany, having a blast, loving life, flying everywhere. I'm married at this point. Winkler's now my last name. And my husband and I decided we want to have a family. We're both flyers. He's a navigator. I was pilot. And
That's like a good combination right there.
it was. Exactly. It still is. Except now I navigate and he drives. I don't know what the deal is. I do like to sit in the right seat now. Oh, I can read. Yes, do hard work. So it's at this point when we're in Germany that we decided we want to have a family. Well, okay, that's allowable as a female flyer, except for the fact that they decide, we didn't issue you a husband, we issued you an airplane. You're going to Little Rock to be an instructor, and Marty, you're going to the Pentagon to be a staff officer. Not conducive to family life or even creating a family. So at that point, my pilot commitment was at the end, and I decided to try something new. So that's where the choose your own adventure model comes in. And I was thinking, what's next? How do I recreate myself? And what is that? What do I like doing? And I didn't really know, other than the fact that I knew I liked to solve problems. I liked and was often put into situations where, like, Winkler, this is really broken over here. Can you go take on that shop? We need it like fixed up. And I just love that kind of a challenge. And then once I'd fix it up, like, I really need something new, and I'd ask for the next job. So as an officer, you don't just fly, you do other things like
And
that.
it tapped your CS degree, if I remember correctly. They're like, oh yeah, she's got some technical chops. Let's give that to her.
Yeah. Me and VBA and Excel were
That's right.
we're pals.
You were cool.
No. And so that's what I found myself just doing when I wasn't flying, was solving problems. And I was like, what do people do, like, in the real world to do that? Like, what jobs are that like? And so I started with, like, professional organizer. Like, I really like organizing stuff. And then my husband's like, do you want to be a therapist? It's like, he's like, people that do that, like, need help, like, help. Do you want to do that? I was like, no, like, I want to clean up their crap. He's like, do it for business. Like, figure out what that looks like in, like, business terms. And so a few Google searches later, and I got to management consultant, and I was like, oh, lean process improvement,
Yeah.
Toyota Way. It was back when that was, like, a really big thing. Green belts were popping up all over the place. And I was like, okay, that's what I'll try. So we moved to the Pentagon, which is a good place to try that if you haven't, worked for a consulting firm.
Wait till she gets to the Japan part of the story, and you'll see how far she goes with the whole organization thing.
Yeah.
I'll bring it up.
Yes, the professional organizing. I know, I still do that
Yeah.
for people. But this is just kind of about recreating yourself, like, really looking at what you enjoy doing naturally, and then seeing, like, literally doing Google searches to how it might work out professionally. And that's what I found myself doing. So I get to a DC, and Bearing Point hires me to be a management consultant. Then I got my PMP, IT requirements development, because the CS degree helps, and started getting my feet wet with that, and getting into project management at the time, and doing that, which then in turn got me a reserve gig working at the Pentagon, which was kind of fun, in logistics transformation community, doing supply chain improvement efforts. And then we got orders to Japan. So I'd set everything up. I had this awesome career, finally have twins, baby twins, and this. And I find out I'm pregnant with the third child within 2 years, and we're moving to Japan. I got toddler 2-year-olds. So now I have to give up my reserve job my Deloitte job, 2 baby twins, and I'm pregnant, 6 months pregnant with them. And we're moving to Japan. I was like, whew, okay, we got this. So quit those jobs. We assembled the kids. I didn't quit them, quit the jobs. And we head to Japan. And this was 2010. And now I'm a stay-at-home mom. And I thought that's what I wanted. I really thought that's what I wanted. And I had this visualization, like from pilot to stay-at-home mom. Like that was my mental model. I'm gonna do this. And then I'm changing 3 sets of diapers. And it's exhausting. I'm stuck on base housing because I don't know if you know much about Japan and like the little tiny everything. I'm not tiny. And now I have 3 babies. Nobody has 3 babies in Japan. Well, very few. Like I can't even negotiate the escalator, elevator situations. I have a minivan in Japan. Who wants a minivan in Tokyo? Nobody. And so just trying to navigate like literally daily life. And I have, here's where it gets fun. I have C-130s doing low approaches over my base housing while I'm changing 3 sets of diapers. My husband's flying helicopters into Tokyo to be wined and dined by Japanese military while I'm at home changing more diapers. And I loved it. I wouldn't have given it up. But like, I just was like coming to that realization that my mental model maybe wasn't exactly what I thought it would be.
I know you wanted to have the 3 kids. You just wanted to clone yourself and have the other stuff as well. You wanted to figure out how to do it all. You're still like that.
I kind of am. That's true. But I just found that maybe that wasn't like the reality wasn't what I thought it would be for myself, not for everybody else. So okay, so one day, it's about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. All 3 kids are asleep, which is a magical moment. And the walls start shaking. And
It's 2010, right?
yeah, I think it's 2011. It was like March 11, 2011.
Okay.
The walls start shaking. And my first thought is, I grew up in California, so like I know earthquakes. Which baby do I grab? Like they're all asleep. I was like, I can't grab 3 babies. And there are 3 locations. They were all asleep in different rooms for some reason. I don't even know why. But I stood there paralyzed for 3 minutes. It was the longest earthquake I'd ever experienced. Just thinking I can't choose. Like, and like, I'm just gonna pray that the walls stay up and then grab everyone and get into the street or whatever. And that was kind of crazy. Came back and I'd gotten a reserve gig there. I did end up getting a reserve job there working for U.S. Forces Japan. And my first assignment as a new plans officer was to do the lessons learned for Operation Tomodachi, which was the response to the tsunami that from the earthquake that I experienced in that moment. And what I learned in that lesson learned, because I facilitated it, is that U.S. Forces Japan was a political alliance. It was organized to like maintain the alliance. It wasn't organized to respond in the event of a crisis. They didn't know how to do knowledge management. The systems weren't set up. PACOM in Hawaii knew how to do that. But little U.S. Forces Japan in Tokyo had no clue, didn't have the thought processes, the computer setup, or anything to have everyone converge and respond. So my first job after I did the lessons learned was to set up a KM shop. That's when I fell in love with knowledge management.
What does KM stand for?
Oh, knowledge management, thank you. And so I fell in love with that as a domain. I didn't even know what it was going into this thing, but all of a sudden I learned that there's this domain that's all about how do you foster, share, create, innovate using knowledge, the cross-section of so many different disciplines that I was like, maybe this is my thing. Like it's all of a sudden this dark moment at home. I was like, I can go to school. Like maybe I could do that from home. So I found an online program with Kent State to get a Master's of Science in Knowledge Management. And there's the choose your own adventure movement, the leap. Like maybe I could do both. Like maybe I can like somehow still be at the stay-at-home mom, but get this intellectual like learning thing. Because as Dan was talking about, I'm a lifelong learner. I love school. So fast forward a little bit, we got the Pentagon, land back here in Boise, not back, land in Boise to live here and retire here. And all of a sudden I'm looking for a new job. And I've just gotten my KM degree. I have more consulting experience, was like, I think I want to work out of Boise. I had a remote job in DC living here. And I was like, I think I want to move and work in Boise and be part of this community in that way. And that's when I applied for the director of the PMO job from ET. He was the hiring authority, right? And
I knew a good thing when I saw it.
oh, thank you. And what was cool about my start at HealthWise was this. Like, talk about an onboarding experience. If ever you want to onboard somebody that's going to be a supervisor, do it this way. Like, learn from the best. Before I started HealthWise, check this out. He goes, you only have one job you need to do when you prepare to start this work. I was like, okay. He's like, here's the Strength Finders 2.0 book. I want you to do the online assessment and bring the results that first day. How many people here have done Strength Finders? Okay, a lot. Probably, I'm gonna go with 60, 70%. I don't know about you online. I did the test. It's kind of an annoying test, let's be honest. Who likes to do that? But the results you get back are way worth whatever you put into it. Sorry, I'm not selling, I'm not a coach, but seriously, if you haven't done this, for me, it was eye-opening in terms of learning about your strengths and providing a language and a taxonomy around strengths. And God bless people that like KM, like taxonomies. So I did that, and okay, that was cool. I learned about myself. But here's one better. The first day, ET took me to lunch with my new PM team, right? It's like 6 PMs. And we went to lunch, and each person went around the table and explained their strengths and defined them and talked about how their strengths come out at work, how they're able to leverage their strengths in their capacity as PMs. Not one PM was the same. That's the beauty of strengths. It's this crazy chemistry of your top 5 to 10 strengths that come together and put together create each individual unique person. Well, what do you do as a director of a PM? But assign people to projects and try to optimize the right match between projects and project managers. And you do it as a product manager director. You do it as any manager that's putting people on projects. So if you happen to know the secret sauce to each one of your PMs, how much better information do you have than to be able to match those strengths in those projects? So I highly recommend that. It was such a gift, and it really showed me that I could make these leaps and learnings using stuff other than just my own intellect. Like, now I had a special decoder ring about the people that worked for me. So it seemed like this next step up. And now I've been using this like at the city with my direct reports. I encourage like different teams as they're building like project teams to do strengths so that they can really understand each other at a deeper level when they start work together. It just really helps optimize.
I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, you're good. Yeah.
I know one of Alex's strengths, it might even be the top one, is input. And if you think, I loved how you talked about this when we were dialoguing about it's like a structure. It's an input to help you take those leaps of faith. I thought that was a really interesting way that you sort of crafted that insight.
Yeah, thanks for remembering that. I never remember what I say verbally. To me, what Strength Finders did, it's a taxonomy of simple vocabulary of 34 strengths, but it has this depth of definition behind it that really gives you the secret sauce as to people's superpowers. Going back to Dan's superpower comment, like, I just love it as a framework. Now we're coming closer to present day. Okay, so I'm at HealthWise, cranking, loving, not looking for a new job, and then ET calls me up. He's like, hey, got time to talk?
Well, you weren't supposed to tell the HealthWise people. Oh,
there are some HealthWise people here.
Just kidding. Just kidding.
He's like, my neighbor is the chief of the airport, and they're looking for a new CIO at the city. Erica Cobb's amazing, but she left for something else. And he's like, would you be interested? I was like, I literally laughed ET off the phone. I was like, CIO of the city? Like, that's cool, but I'm not qualified for that. And he's like, hold on, does it sound interesting? I'm like, well, send me the job rec. I read it. I was like, this sounds wicked interesting. And he's like, okay, so it sounds interesting, and you say you're not qualified. Are you 60% qualified? I was like, I'm more than 60% qualified. I'm probably like 85% qualified. And he's like, here's the best question, especially for you females in the audience. What would a guy do? Right? Like, I don't mean that to sound weird. It's like the Mars and Venus thing, right? Like women like have in general, stereotypically, not everybody, like have this thing like I have to have every single qualification in order to qualify for something. But that's just not the way we have to be when we transition to jobs. If you had no learning to do, why would you ever need to progress, right? Like, so this idea, this like in one sentence, such a simple sentence, such a simple, powerful sentence, I was able to recage my gyros, or in other words, just think about the mental model and the box I was putting myself in by my very statement.
You're competitive too, so
Yeah,
I was
a
channeling
little
that a little bit.
Thank you. And so I was like, well, you know what? Why am I opting out? Like without even trying. Like I could ask, see if we're a good match. I mean, job searching is all about matchmaking, right? Are we a good match? Both ways. And so at that point, I was like, okay, I'll just try for it. And then when I did, I was totally myself in the interview process. It's nice when you already have a gig and you're applying for a gig, like you're not as desperate. And sorry if that came out wrong. And so I really had nothing to lose. And I was like, I'm just going to be myself. And if it's a good match, sweet. Kind of like dating. And they provided me an offer. I was like, okay, let's try this. So I show up at the city and like, you know, I've told you all this, like, I know my strengths, like I've had all these like cool experiences. They all kind of add up to having a lot of qualifications. I show up and I kid you not, I was like, oh God, now I have to perform. Like, oh, like, who am I to be like managing this group? Holy cow, there's like 13 different departments I'm serving as the CIO. There's the airport and fire and police and oh my gosh, parks and recs, and I won't remember them all because who can remember a list of 13 when you're on a stage and you don't know how many people are watching? But like, I was like, holy Moses, like, how do I do this? And so I had this imposter syndrome. That's why I have this slide up here. Like, who am I to say that I am qualified for this? And like, how do I show up? I'm at these meetings with the mayor and all these people that are like super poised and sometimes serious, and I'm not. And I was like, okay, do I have to like wear a suit now? People don't wear suits at Whole Foods. And they wear running pants like to work, and or at least I did. So I had this moment, these few moments this week of feeling just really like insecure, I would say. And then I decided, like, you know what? This is self-talk, positive self-talk now, I'd learned. Like, they hired you. They didn't hire some other person. They hired you, and you were you in your interview. And so just act like you. And if people like it, great. If they don't, then go find another job. Like, what's the worst that can happen? Back to Dan's statement, right? And so I guess this migration through this different career journey is not supposed to be like, oh, cool, Alex. It's more just about like, what's the mental model that I had and the journey that I had learning about myself and my strengths with these different frameworks and whatever else that help you navigate these choices and these things that happen to you. So that's what I really wanted to kind of like tease out of the different narrative here, and then end with this. So I brought this letter. My dad passed away like 4 years after writing me this letter, and I still have it. Geez, if I tear up, forgive me. Chicks do that. Okay. So let's just finish on this kind of a note. That's why I put the reading glasses on my head. He goes, fact is, again, this is him coaching me to change my mental models in pilot training, right? Even when your performance is perfect, that's only once. So perfect performance can't make you okay permanently. Your next performance may be flawed. And when it is, that doesn't mean you suck, because your next performance may be perfect. When you choose your emotional state to fit your performance while you are in the process of learning to perform, you're doomed to experience erratic mood swings. Why would you do that to you? Only one halfway sensible sounding reason. By making yourself feel bad for poor performance, you expect to develop the motivation to push yourself to try even harder, thence to perform better. But it doesn't really work. You and only you control the content of your thoughts. Since your feelings result from your beliefs about your thoughts, you're able to and do constantly control your mood states. You don't like the feelings you're creating? Change two things, your thoughts and your belief about your thoughts. Don't say you can't. If you made them up in the first place, and you did, you are free to revise them. So that's the kind of thing my dad would say. to encourage us. And say again? Yeah, I PDF'd it. We can do that. I've actually gone back and read this. When I was feeling that imposter syndrome, I went back and read this and I was like, Alex, you're just at one of those learning moments and you love it. Like you love learning. So get on it. Like for the love of Pete, just start over. And that's what this has been about this year, this quarter. An embarrassing meeting with the mayor on December 14th. Not that I remember the date, but I was like, God, that was really not. I tried, but I just didn't hit it out of the park. But I was like, okay, this is your moment. Winkler, you know how to do this. Like, come back, learn a lot about broadband and internet connectivity in the city of Boise, and you'll get this. And damned if I haven't been learning about that. So make your leap of faith, learn how to learn your strengths, have fun with Strength Finders if you like that as a model, and just embrace the change. That's what I think. So thank you.
Yes, that was fantastic. Let's hear it for Alex Winkler. Wow. Good job, Jet. You know what? I do think I think I did hear. We need to get that. Alex, how can you be your dad? That letter? Oh my goodness. Holy Moses, that thing was good. I got that, picked that up too. I like this. I don't know how that works, but it's really good. Okay, so I think that you'll see that the big thing, if you see all of this about the future of change and Idaho's tech adaptation, you'll see one of the big things that takes place on this right now is we had technology type discussions, but the big thing that we talked about were really some of the skills that we all have to be able to be successful as we continue to grow a tech ecosystem in Idaho. Because the change, what did James say? What percent of the people left his company to go work remotely? 40%, right? And when you have that type of of change that's coming at you, and it's just not Clearwater, it's coming at everybody because now this remote workforce is changing the way we do it. We talk daily to people. Moshe can tell you about this. We talk daily, and I can't tell you how many people moved here. We had one person that it was the person that was the VP of enterprise sales, and they moved up here because their new company had a philosophy that had changed. They said, you can live where you feel the most innovative. And he had been figuring out how he could live here to be able to be in Boise because he visited Boise, he wanted to live here. So they moved here, live over by Roosevelt Market. And his wife, phenomenal, does public policy for one of the top companies here, Salesforce, right? And so they both live here now. So this is a new talent to the area, but it's not really directly. So now we've got to learn, how do we integrate people from other areas and other opportunities? How do we bring them in to this one of the best tech ecosystems in Idaho? Okay, now I'm going to end. I'm in Hawaii. Now think about this, because how many people have been traveling a lot recently? Now you're back out there, right, doing things, and everything's going good. I'm in Kona, and now I'm in a Westin hotel, northern up there, one of the best beaches in the world, and also staying at Hilton as we use our points. Believe me, I'm not doing this because I get paid a tremendous amount of money. I'm doing this because we're using points. So I'm sitting there and talking to people. The Super Bowl's on. I'm sitting a guy by Washington who grew up in India, who's a physician, and I'm sitting at about 5 other people around. They're rooting for other people, hoping that Cincinnati wins and all this other stuff. Most of them find out, hey, you're from Boise, you're from Idaho, and most people have this perception about how awesome the Boise tech ecosystem is, and how people are talking to me about Coeur d'Alene. One person started talking about Twin Falls and about this great area. And I'm sitting there and I'm recognizing, you guys, this is what I'm realizing, that Idaho is one of the top areas when it comes to people perception now. Where was it where was it 20 years ago? You know, when you had the Aryan Nation stuff, you know what I mean? But Idaho has all of these things that are going on right now that are very positive, and the adaptation that's taking place and the people, the way that people perceive technology and innovation and the ecosystem that's growing here is phenomenal. And I think I hear it all the way around. People, I hear it. If you go to California, I mean, I can think about 20 people that on my trip were from California. And, you know, 4 of them came up to me, and I was wearing the big B on my hat, you know, and I'm sitting there, and the person stops me, hold it. Our son is graduating in economics from Boise State next year. And there we go, Ed, right? And I'm going, and all these type of things. And then, by the way, about half of the things we've had University of Idaho was all over everything we did in the last 3 days, right? People are going, and you're having all these positive things that are taking place. But I can only tell you that the only reason that this takes place is because the people that are on this call, the people in this room, and the people that are building all of this as we adapt to a new normal that's going to be taking place over the next 2 to 3 years. So think about that as we go on. I want to make sure that we thank, again, Julie and Jeff, thank you guys so much for putting together such a wonderful conference. Jet and Corey, thanks you guys so much for leading the Computing Alliance and the things that take place here. We have a lot of people that serve in this on a board that kind of gives direction to that, so we really appreciate that too. And thanks to all of you that you're doing to help grow technology and innovation. And I want to make sure, and again, I said this 11 years ago over in the Linden Building where we had our first Develop Idaho, we had Perkins Coie with us as our sponsor, and we have Perkins Coie with us today as a great sponsor who really community focused with what we do. Truck Stop, thank you for them for the lunch that's provided and everything that's going on today. And also the networking, truckstop.com has been fantastic. You probably heard that our former chair who just changed, Jeet Kumar with In Time Tech, as our current chair of the Idaho Technology Council. Paris Cole was the chair and for the previous 2 years. Paris just announced